On paper, London looks unimaginably wealthy. Towering balance sheets, soaring land values, and a skyline that suggests endless demand all point to a city awash with capital. Beneath that surface, however, sits an estimated £262 billion of unrealised value locked inside an ageing and underused office buildings. A figure so large it actively distorts how London's economy is understood. This is not money waiting to be unlocked with policy tweaks or market rebounds. It's value frozen in place, embedded in buildings designed for a world that no longer exists. These offices still stand, still appear productive on spreadsheets, and still inflate headline valuations, but many can no longer attract tenants at viable rents, meet modern energy standards, or justify the cost of adaptation. In economic terms, they exist in the grey zone, not fully obsolete, yet no longer functional. Their purpose creates the illusion of abundance while masking a growing structural weakness at the core of the city's commercial property market. As working patterns shift permanently, environmental regulations tighten and occupiers become more selective about where and how they operate. London's office market is quietly splitting in two. At one end are premium, energy-efficient buildings, flexible, compliant and still in demand. At the other are millions of square foot of secondary and aging space, technically available, increasingly empty and financially stranded. These buildings are not failing because demand has disappeared, but because the cost, risk and complexity of bringing them back into relevance have become prohibitive. This widening gap between what exists and what the market actually wants is now reshaping investment flows, employment patterns and long-term economic resilience across the capital. Yet it remains one of London's least discussed problems. A slow burn crisis hiding in plain sight, written into the skyline itself. London is sitting on an estimated £262 billion of unrealised value locked inside ageing and underused office buildings. This is not a cash reserve the city can spend, but potential investment value bedded in property that cannot currently be accessed. As working patterns shift and older offices fall out of favour, large parts of London's commercial estate are being financially stranded. Office vacancies across London is running at roughly 9 to 11%, with some districts far above that level. Areas such as Canary Wharf and parts of the city have reached double-digit vacancy rates, leaving millions of square foot technically available but practically unusable. Much of this space exists on paper, yet remains empty because it no longer fits what the occupier wants. Demand has polarised sharply towards high-end quality, energy-efficient, Grade A offices that support hybrid working and lower running costs. Older secondary buildings are often poorly insulated, expensive to operate and inflexible in layout. The result is a structural mismatch, where London has an oversupply of space that businesses won't take alongside ongoing demand for modern offices that are in short supply. By 2030, office buildings must meet stricter energy efficient standards to be legally let. A large share of London's existing stock is expected to fail those rules. Retrofitting can cost tens or even hundreds of millions of pounds per building, and in many cases the economics simply do not stack up. Faced with that reality, owners often leave office buildings empty rather than invest. In theory, empty offices could be converted into housing or mixed-use schemes, but in practice, London's planning system slows or blocks this at scale. As approval processes can be lengthy, heritage constraints involved, and Section 106 costs and uncertainty around consent all raise risk and cost. These barriers are a central reason the £262 billion of potential value remains locked. Analysts estimate that fully upgrading or redeveloping this aging office stock could unlock up to £262 billion in investment value and generate around £11.4 billion a year in rental income. Without reform, that investment is deferred or lost entirely, along with jobs, tax revenue and wider economic growth that redevelopment would bring. London simultaneously faces empty offices, a severe housing shortage and an urgent need for investment. Yet the systems designed to manage development prevent large-scale reuse of obsolete buildings. On paper, the city appears asset rich, but in reality, much of that wealth is locked away, creating the impression of a city sitting on hundreds of billions while being unable to touch a penny of it. What's striking about this issue is how misleading the headline numbers can be. 262 billion sounds like untapped wealth, but in reality it reflects the scale of a system that cannot adapt quickly enough. These buildings aren't empty because demand vanished overnight. They're empty because the cost, risk and uncertainty of upgrading or repurposing them has overtaken their value. In many cases, doing nothing has become the least bad financial option. The energy efficiency deadline approaching 2030 exposes the problem even further. Owners are being asked to spend tens or hundreds of millions retrofitting buildings that may still struggle to compete with newer stock. Without planning certainty or economic incentives, it's rational, if damaging, for landlords to delay, mothball or walk away. That logic makes sense individually, but at a city scale it produces stagnation. What's missing is a system that recognises obsolete as a structural issue. What's missing is the system that recognises obsolescence as a structural issue, not a failure of individual assets. Until planning, regulation and investment frameworks align around reuse at scale, London will continue to appear asset rich while functioning capital poor. London's office market is no longer just a property story, it's an economic constraint hiding in plain sight. With high vacancy rates in places like Canary Wharf and parts of the City of London, aren't signs of supply alone, they're symptoms of a system struggling to transition from one era of work to another. Millions of square foot exist, yet remain unusable. Capital exists, yet cannot move. The paradox is stark. At the same time as London faces a severe housing shortage, fiscal pressure on public services and a need for long-term investment, vast amounts of potential value are frozen inside buildings that planning, regulation and economics cannot easily unlock. Analysts estimate that resolving this could generate 11.4 billion a year in rental income and unlock hundreds of billions in investment, but only if redevelopment and conversion become viable at scale. If nothing changes, the risk isn't collapse, it's drift. More empty buildings, more deferred investment, and more neighbourhoods caught between past use and future potential. But if reform does come, whether through faster planning, clear conversation rules or incentives for reuse, London could turn stranded assets into productive ones and ease multiple crises at once. The £262 billion figure isn't a promise, it's a warning. It shows how much value London could mobilise, and how much it continues to leave behind because the systems designed to manage growth haven't really kept pace with reality. If you enjoyed this video and you want more videos just like this, make sure that you like the video, subscribe to my channel and comment your thoughts on this in the comments below.